Have you ever felt a crack run through the carefully constructed reality of your life? Not a small fissure, but a seismic fracture. The kind of break where the job you built your identity on vanishes. The relationship you thought was your foundation turns to dust. The person you saw in the mirror becomes a stranger. You look at the wreckage and you think, this is it. This is the end. I am broken. I am here to tell you, with every ounce of conviction in my being, that you are profoundly and fundamentally wrong. That is not the end. That is the beginning. That crack, that shattering, that moment you feel yourself breaking into a million pieces, that is a sacred event. It is a summons. It is what the great psychologist Carl Jung would identify as the violent, necessary birth of your true self. The pain you are feeling is not a punishment. It is an initiation. It is the pressure that God, the universe, the deep self, whatever name you give the organizing intelligence of existence, is applying to you, not to crush you, but to force the gold out of the rock. This is not a message of placid comfort. This is a brutal and beautiful truth. We are going to journey into the heart of that breaking, into the crucible of your pain, and I will show you precisely how that agony is being used as the divine tool for your transformation. We will dissect the process, step by step, through the unflinching lens of Jungian psychology. You will understand the collapse of your persona, the terrifying descent into your own shadow, and the alchemical process of individuation that forges you into the person you were always meant to be. So if you're tired of being told to just think positive about a pain that is tearing you apart, then stay. Because today we don't ignore the breaking. We honor it. We enter it. We understand its sacred purpose. Today we learn why your breaking is sacred, how God uses pain to transform you. Let's begin with the first and perhaps most violent stage of this sacred process, the shattering of the persona. Carl Jung called the persona the mask. It's the version of you that you present to the world. It's the good employee, the dutiful son, the perfect partner, the strong friend. It's a curated collection of socially acceptable traits designed for survival and acceptance. We all have one. It is a necessary tool for navigating society. But the danger, the deep, soul-killing danger, is when you mistake the mask for your actual face, when the persona becomes your identity. You become the job title, you become the relationship status. You become the collection of likes and approvals from others. Your entire sense of self-worth is outsourced. It's a magnificent, glittering castle built of glass. It looks strong, it reflects the light beautifully, but it is fatally fragile. And the breaking is the first stone thrown through that glass. Think of a man, let's call him Marcus. For 15 years, Marcus was the strategist at a high-powered marketing firm. His persona was flawless: sharp suits, sharper wit, a corner office, and a calendar booked with important meetings. He spoke the language of KPIs and ROI. His colleagues respected him, his bosses valued him. He was his job. His friends were work friends. His conversations were about work. When his partner asked him how he was, he'd talk about a campaign's success. He wasn't lying. He had so deeply fused with the mask of the strategist that there was nothing else to report. He was a hollow man in an expensive suit. Then the breaking came, a merger, a restructuring. The language was cold, impersonal. Marcus, the strategist, was deemed redundant. In a single, sterile 10-minute meeting, the central pillar of his identity was pulverized. He walked out of that building not as a strategist, but as nothing. He didn't know who he was. This is the first sacred act of pain. It is a forced separation. The pain of the job loss wasn't just about money. It was an existential demolition. Who are you when the world stops applauding the role you play? Who are you when the mask is ripped from your face? This is where the real work begins, because the breaking of the persona is almost always initiated by the very things we try to avoid: toxic people, fake friends, manipulators, and hidden enemies. Why? Because the persona, in its desperate need for validation, is a magnet for the inauthentic. Marcus's friends at work, the ones who slapped his back and laughed at his jokes, they vanished. His calls went unanswered. He was no longer useful to their climb. His partner, who loved the prestige and security of his persona, suddenly found him lacking ambition and depressing to be around. She was in love with the mask, not the man. These people were not villains in a grand story. They were simply actors interacting with another actor. When Marcus's role was written out of the play, they had no more lines for him. This is the brutal mercy of the breaking. It's a stress test for your entire life. The pain reveals the fault lines. It shows you who is in your life for your persona and who is there for your soul. It exposes the frenemies who smiled while secretly hoping for your stumble. It unmasks the manipulators who used your predictable persona to their own advantage. The pain is a clarifying fire. It burns away everything that is not real. And what are you left with? An agonizing void, a terrifying freedom. You're standing in the rubble of your glass castle, raw, exposed, and stripped of your identity. You feel lost, stuck, and tired of trying. This is the point where most people make a fatal mistake. They desperately try to build a new mask. They scramble for another job, another relationship, another source of external validation to quickly cover up the void. They try to rebuild the same glass castle on the same broken foundation. But the sacred path is not to rebuild, not yet. The sacred path is to go down. The shattering of the persona is an invitation to descend into the one place the mask was designed to hide, your own shadow. This is the second and most feared part of the journey, the descent into darkness. Once the persona lies in shattered pieces at your feet, you are left in a terrifying silence. The applause from the outside world has stopped. The roles and scripts you memorized are useless. In this silence, for the first time, you begin to hear whispers from within. These are the voices you've spent your entire life suppressing. This is the call of the shadow self. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is everything you are, but have refused to be. It is the repository of all your disowned parts. The anger you were taught was unladylike. The vulnerability you were told was weak. The ambition you deemed selfish. The rage you labeled monstrous. It is your inner coward, your inner tyrant, your inner addict, your inner victim. We all have a shadow. It is a natural and necessary part of a whole psyche. The problem isn't that the shadow exists. The problem is that we deny it. We lock it in the basement of our unconscious mind and pretend it isn't there. But the shadow doesn't just disappear. It festers, it projects. The more you deny your own anger, the more you will be enraged by the anger in others. The more you deny your own manipulative tendencies, the more you will see everyone else as a manipulator. The person who constantly complains about fake friends is often the one who is terrified of their own inauthenticity. The shadow leaks out. It manifests as self-sabotage, chronic anxiety, depression, and inexplicable bursts of rage. It is the hidden enemy within. When your persona breaks, the door to that basement is blown off its hinges. You have no choice but to face what's down there. Let's return to Marcus. After losing his job and his partner, he fell into a deep depression. But underneath the sadness, something else began to stir, a volcanic, terrifying rage. He found himself fantasizing about the ruin of his former boss, the humiliation of his ex-partner. He was disgusted with himself. This isn't me, he thought. I'm not an angry, hateful person. But the breaking was sacred. It was forcing him to see the truth. He was an angry person. He had been suppressing decades of frustration, resentment, and bitterness beneath the polished, agreeable mask of the strategist. He had allowed himself to be used to be a doormat to swallow his pride for a paycheck and a hollow relationship. His rage wasn't a monster to be slain, it was a sacred messenger. It was a part of his own soul, screaming to be acknowledged. This is the heart of shadow work. It is not about eliminating the dark parts of yourself. That is impossible. It is about turning on the light of consciousness and looking at them. It's about having the courage to say, yes, that is in me. The capacity for cruelty is in me. The capacity for cowardice is in me. The capacity for profound selfishness is in me. This journey into the shadow is where you discover the roots of your self-sabotage. Marcus realized he had subtly sabotaged 2 major promotion opportunities in the past. Why? Because his shadow, the part of him that felt like an unworthy imposter, was secretly running the show. It was afraid of the visibility that came with true success, so it engineered failures to keep him safe in the familiar territory of his persona. He was tired of trying, but the truth was, a part of him was trying to fail. Dealing with difficult people, with toxic environments, becomes impossible until you've faced your own shadow. You cannot protect your energy from a manipulator if you are unconscious of the part of you that wants to be manipulated for a sense of belonging. You cannot break a cycle of attracting toxic partners until you face the part of you that feels unworthy of a healthy one. The hidden enemies without are often just reflections of the unacknowledged enemy within. The descent is excruciating. It feels like you are becoming a worse person. You are confronting the very things you've built your identity on not being. But this is the crucible. This is the alchemical fire. God, the self, the force of individuation, is not leading you into this darkness to abandon you. It is leading you there because you cannot become whole until you retrieve the lost, disowned pieces of your soul. The pain of this stage is the pain of reintegration. It is the agonizing process of stretching your consciousness to hold the totality of who you are, the light and the dark. And it is only from this place of radical, brutal self-honesty that true transformation can begin. This is the 3rd stage, the alchemy of pain, the process of individuation. After the shattering of the mask and the terrifying descent into the shadow, you arrive at the most crucial stage of transformation. This is the alchemy. This is where God or the self truly uses the pain to transform you. Alchemy in its mystical sense was the process of turning base metal like lead into gold. In psychological terms, it is the process of transmuting the raw, painful, base material of your shadow into the gold of conscious, integrated power. This is the essence of Jung's concept of individuation. Individuation is the journey to becoming an individual, an undivided whole person. It's not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming complete. It means you no longer live a fragmented life with your shiny persona up top and your festering shadow in the basement. It's about bringing all the parts of yourself into the same room, under the compassionate and firm leadership of your conscious mind. So how does this alchemy work? It works by consciously engaging with the shadow material you've uncovered. You don't act it out and you don't suppress it again, you integrate it. Let's look at Marcus. He has acknowledged his volcanic rage. The old way was to suppress it persona. The chaotic way would be to act on it, to send hateful emails or slash his boss's tires, unconscious shadow possession. The alchemical path, the path of individuation, is different. Marcus sits with his rage. He asks it questions. Where do you come from? What is your purpose? He listens to the answer without judgment. He realizes the rage is not just about the betrayal. It's a lifetime of accumulated energy from every time he said yes when he meant no. Every time he bit his tongue to be the nice guy. Every time he let his boundaries be crossed. His rage is not a monster, it is his disowned power. It is the guardian of his sovereignty, screaming because it has been ignored for decades. The alchemical transmutation happens when he decides to use that energy consciously. Instead of letting the rage control him, he harnesses it. He uses its fire to forge boundaries. The next time a family member makes an unreasonable demand, the old Marcus would have sighed and complied. The new integrating Marcus feels the familiar spark of anger, recognizes it as a signal, and calmly but firmly says, "No, I can't do that." The rage, once a destructive force, has been alchemized into the gold of assertiveness. The same goes for the other parts of his shadow. He looks at his deep-seated feeling of worthlessness, the one that led to his self-sabotage. Instead of running from it, he confronts it. He traces it back to his childhood, to a critical parent who made him feel he was never good enough. He sees it, understands it, and begins the difficult work of reparenting himself. He separates the voice of the inner critic from his true self. He starts a small, independent consulting business, not to rebuild his old persona, but as an act of self-belief. He takes a risk, not for external validation, but to prove to himself that he is worthy. The lead of shame is slowly, painstakingly transmuted into the gold of self-worth. This is the sacred work. It is active, it is conscious, and it is brutally difficult. It requires immense emotional intelligence and a commitment to radical self-honesty. This is how you break cycles. You see the pattern, attracting manipulators, for example, and instead of blaming them, you turn inward. You ask, what part of my shadow is resonating with this? What disowned part of me is this person reflecting back to me? Perhaps it's a disowned need for power, which makes you attracted to powerful but toxic people. By acknowledging and integrating your own healthy ambition, you no longer need to live vicariously through them. Your energy is no longer a target because you have sealed the cracks in your own psyche. This process of individuation is the ultimate act of protecting your energy. When you are whole, when you know and accept your own capacity for darkness, you become incredibly discerning. You can spot the subtle signs of hate and manipulation in others because you recognize the energy. You face that same energy in yourself. A fake friend's insincere flattery no longer fools you because you have stopped outsourcing your self-worth. A manipulator's guilt trip no longer works because you have taken responsibility for your own shadow emotions and are no longer afraid of them. You move from a state of unconscious reaction to conscious creation. The pain was the catalyst. The breaking was the demolition of a prison you didn't even know you were in. The shadow was the treasure map to the lost pieces of your soul. And the alchemy of individuation is the process of following that map, retrieving your treasure and forging yourself, piece by painful piece, into a sovereign individual. This is not a journey to a place of no more pain. It's a journey to a place where pain no longer breaks you but informs you. It becomes data, it becomes a teacher. And the scars it leaves behind are not signs of weakness, but symbols of a battle fought and won. This leads us to the final stage, recognizing the sacred in the scars. When you emerge from the alchemical fire of individuation, you are not the same person who went in. The glass castle of the persona is gone forever. In its place stands something far more resilient and far more real. It is a structure built of integrated experience, fortified by self-awareness, and marked with the sacred scars of your journey. This is the final, profound shift in perspective. You stop seeing your breaking as a moment of failure or damage. You begin to see it as the single most important and sacred event of your life. The scars, the memory of the job loss, the betrayal, the dark night of the soul are no longer sources of shame. They are your credentials. They are the proof that you have faced the dragon of your own unconscious and have emerged not unscathed but whole. Living as an integrated individual changes everything, especially your relationships. Your ability to read people becomes uncannily accurate. Having faced your own shadow, you now see the world with Jungian eyes. You see the personas, the masks that everyone wears, but you don't see them with cynicism or judgment. You see them with a kind of sad compassion. You see the tough guy at the gym, and you recognize the frightened boy in his shadow. You see the overly sweet people pleaser and you recognize the repressed rage she is terrified of. You see the subtle signs of love and hate not just in their words, but in the dissonance between their persona and the energy leaking from their shadow. You can spot a hidden enemy or a frenemy from a mile away, not because you're paranoid, but because their mask is transparent to you. You can feel the incongruence between the words they say and the unconscious envy or resentment they radiate. You no longer get entangled in their dramas because you are not looking for their validation. You have your own. This is the ultimate form of protecting your energy. You build a life based on authenticity, and the inauthentic simply cannot survive in that environment. They fall away not because you push them, but because there is nothing for their persona to hook into. The motivation you feel now is entirely different. It's not the frantic, anxious motivation of the persona, driven by fear and the need for approval. It is a deep, quiet, unshakable inspiration that comes from your core. It is the motivation to express your true self in the world, to do the work that is uniquely yours to do. You may end up doing something similar to what you did before, like Marcus starting his own firm, but the why is completely transformed. He's not doing it to be the strategist. He's doing it because it is an authentic expression of his integrated talents and passions. This transformation is the true waking up. It's a permanent shift in consciousness. You understand that life is not about avoiding pain. It is about using pain as a catalyst for growth. You learn to trust the process. When a new challenge arises, a new moment of pain, you don't panic. You get quiet. You ask, what is this here to teach me? What part of me is being called forth now? The breaking was sacred because it was an act of divine intervention from your own deepest self. It was a controlled demolition required to save you from a life of hollow pretense. The pain was the pressure needed for you to be born into your own life. You had to be broken out of the shell of the persona to become the powerful, authentic, and whole being you were always destined to be. The memory of your breaking is not a wound. It is an altar. It is the place you go to remember the moment your real life began. So look back at the rubble of what you once called your life. Look at the pain that brought you to your knees. Do not see it as a curse. Do not see it as evidence of your failure. See it for what it is, a sacred wound, a holy breaking. The moment God, the universe, the deep self, loved you enough to shatter the illusion and call you home to yourself. The journey is not over. Individuation is a lifelong process, but you are no longer lost in the dark. You have a map and you have a compass, your own integrated consciousness. You have learned the most important lesson there is, that within every ending there is a violent, beautiful, and sacred beginning. The pain was a doorway. You had the courage to walk through it. Now your task is to live the truth you have found on the other side. Do not shrink back. Do not attempt to rebuild the old masks. Wear your scars as the emblems of your sovereignty. Trust the wisdom you have earned in the fire. Your breaking was not your destruction. It was and always will be your salvation. Embrace it, honor it, and from it build a life that is unapologetically, magnificently, and wholly yours.